Good morning. I hope you are good and safe at your home. Today in this e-class, we will study chapter number 8 of our English book Moments. The name of the chapter is A House is Not a Home. It is written by Zan Godioso. Zan is a contributing author and editor of several volumes of the best-selling Chicken Soup for the Soul series. She is also co-author of the award-winning book The Buddha Next Door. Zan is currently working on a documentary about happiness, while also writing a weekly blog on the same object. She is exploring what constitutes happiness in a time of change. This story, A House is Not a Home, reflects the challenges of being a teenager and the problems of growing up. The narrator in this story is a teenager boy. When he goes to a new school, he finds it difficult to make new friends and adjust to a new place. He feels lonely and depressed. After some days, his house catches fire and he finds that his life has ended. He feels the loss of his home badly. The boy is deeply saddened by the loss of his pet cat. But when his schoolmates show their concern for him, his whole vision for the life changes and he again starts taking interest in life. This story highlights a thin difference between a house and a home. While a house is a building made up of bricks and walls where people only live, whereas a home is a place where a family lives together, sharing the unique bond of love and togetherness. The narrator's house gets destroyed by fire and he gets a new house. Then he realizes that his home is the one built by love and affection of his family and loved ones. Love and affection of one's family is more precious than the place. Now let's start with the explanation of chapter. My first year of high school felt awkward. After leaving junior high at the head of my class, with all the seniority the upper grade levels could afford me, it felt strange starting over as a freshman. The school was twice as big as my old school, and to make matters worse, my closest friends were sent to a different high school. I felt very isolated. In this paragraph, it is explained that as the narrator entered high school, in his first year he felt strange. In the junior school, he had been the head of the class and had enjoyed the privileges given to seniors. It was uncomfortable to be a fresher at the high school. The school was twice as big as the old one, and to make matters worse, his friends had gone into other schools, so he was lonely too in this school. I missed my old teachers so much that I would go back and visit them. They would encourage me to get involved in school activities so that I could meet new people. They told me that in time I would adjust and probably end up loving my new school more than I had my old one. They made me promise that when that happened, I would still come by and visit them from time to time. I understood the psychology in what they were saying, but I took some comfort in it nonetheless. Here in this paragraph, it is explained that the narrator was missing his old school, so he would go back to his school to meet the teachers. The teachers would encourage him to meet new people in the new school and to get involved in new activities. They said that after some time, he would adjust to the new surroundings and would love the new school more than the previous one. The teachers at the old school made him promise that he would visit them even when he got settled in the new school. The narrator tried to feel comfortable with these words of his teachers. One Sunday afternoon, not long after I had started high school, I was sitting at home at our dining room table doing homework. It was a cold and windy fall day, and we had a fire going in our fireplace. As usual, my red tabby cat was lying on top of my papers, purring loudly and occasionally swatting at my pen for entertainment's sake. Now, one Sunday afternoon, an accident occurred in the life of narrator. Zan was sitting at the dining table doing his homework. The day was cold and windy, and a fire was set up at the fireplace. The narrator's pet, who was a cat, was lying on top of the sheets of paper. It was making a purring sound and was hitting on his pen just for amusement. She was never far from me. I had rescued her when she was a kitten, and somehow she knew that I was the one responsible for giving her the good life. As Zan had saved the cat, it remained closed to him as he protected her. Now, the cat only knew that Zan would be responsible for giving her good life because he saved her in the past. My mother stoking the fire to keep the house nice and warm. Suddenly I smelled something strange, and then I noticed it. Smoke pouring in through the seams of the ceiling. The smoke began to fill the room so quickly that we could barely see. Groping our way to the front door, we all ran out into the front yard. By the time we made our way outside, the whole roof was engulfed in flames and it was spreading quickly. I ran to the neighbors to call the fire department while I watched my mother run back into the house. As it was a cold day, Zan's mother tended the fire to keep the house warm. Now, there came a smoke that starts filling the room from the ceiling. Within a few seconds, it filled the room and they could hardly see. They made their way to the front door and escaped into the garden. The roof had caught fire, which spread quickly. Zan ran to the neighbors to call the fire department, while his mother ran inside the house. My mother then ran out of the house carrying a small metal box full of important documents. She dropped the case on the lawn and in a crazed state ran back into the house. I knew what she was after. My father had died when I was young, and I was certain that she was not going to let his pictures and letters go up in flames. They were the only things that she had to remember him by. Still I screamed at her, "Mom, no!" Now, when there was a fire in the house, Zan's mother came out of the house holding a small metal box that was full of papers. She threw it on the lawn and then she ran back again into the house. She was trying to save important things. As Zan's father had died when he was small, she had to save his pictures and letters, which were the only memories of his that they had. Zan screamed at her not to go inside the burning house. I was about to run after her when I felt a strange hand hold me back. It was a fireman. I had not even noticed that the street had already filled with fire trucks. I was trying to free myself from his grasp, yelling, "You don't understand, my mother is in there." Mother had gone inside the house again, and Zan was trying to run after her, but he was stopped by a firefighter. The street was full of firefighters' trucks. Zan tried to free himself and tried to explain that his mother had got inside the house and he wanted to bring her back. He held on to me while other firefighters ran into the house. He knew that I was not acting very logically and that if he were to let go, I had run. He was right. The firefighter did not let him go because he knew that the very next moment Zan would run inside the house for his mother. "It is all right, they will get her," he said. Now, here the firefighter who was holding Zan, He said that the other firefighters would bring her mother back and the mother will be safe soon. He wrapped a blanket around me and sat me down in our car. Soon after that, a fireman emerged from our house with my mom in tow. He quickly took her over to the truck and put an oxygen mask on her. I ran over and hugged her. All those times I ever argued with her and hated her vanished at the thought of losing her. At that moment, the firefighter wrapped a blanket around Zan and made him sit in their car. A firefighter came out of the house with Zan's mother behind him. He took her to the fire truck and put an oxygen mask on her mouth. Zan ran to her and hugged her. The thought of losing his mother aroused affection in Zan's heart, and all thoughts of dislike vanished from his mind. "She is going to be okay," said the fireman. "She just inhaled a little smoke." And then he ran back to fight the fire while my mother and I sat there dazed. I remember watching my house burn down and thinking that there was nothing I could do about it. Firefighter calmed Zan and said that she would be fine. She had inhaled smoke. Then the fireman ran into the house to bring down the fire, while the mother-son duo sat there wondering on what had happened. Zan still remembers how he saw his house burned and felt helpless about it. 5 hours later, the fire was finally out. Our house was almost completely burned down. But then it struck me. I hadn't seen my cat. Where was my cat? Much to my horror, I realized that she was nowhere to be found. Then all at once it hit me. The new school, the fire, my cat. I broke down in tears and cried and cried. I was suffering loss, big time. Now it was almost 5 hours to control the fire. The house was totally burned down. Then Zan realized that his pet cat was missing. He could not find it. He got sad and depressing thoughts like difficulty adjusting to the new school, the burning of the house, and losing his pet cat made him cry. He was very sad. He thought that he was suffering many losses. It was the bad times of his life. The fireman wouldn't let us go back into the house that night. It was still too dangerous. Dead or alive, I couldn't imagine leaving without knowing about my cat. Regardless, I had to go. We piled into the car with just the clothes on our backs and a few of the firemen's blankets and made our way to my grandparents' house to spend the night. The house was completely burned and they were not allowed to go into the building as it could be dangerous. Zan wanted to know about his cat, but he had to leave. They got into the car with none of their belongings. All they had were the few blankets given by the firemen. They spent the night at Zan's grandparents' house. The next day, Monday, I went to school. When the fire broke out, I was still wearing the dress I had worn to church that morning, but I had no shoes. I had kicked them off when I was doing my homework. They became yet another casualty of the fire. So I had to borrow some tennis shoes from my aunt. Why couldn't I just stay home from school? My mother wouldn't hear of it, but I was totally embarrassed by everything. The clothes I was wearing looked weird. I had no books or homework, and my backpack was gone. I had my life in that backpack. The more I tried to fit in, the worse it got. Was I destined to be an outcast and a geek all my life? That is what it felt like. I didn't want to grow up, change, or have to handle life if it was going to be this way. I just wanted to curl up and die. Next day was Monday. So Zan went to the school the next day. At the time of the fire, He was wearing the dress that he wore to the church on Sundays. He was not wearing his shoes. Why? Because he had removed them and kicked them off when he sat to do his homework. They were also burned in the fire. So Zan borrowed tennis shoes from his aunt. He did not want to go to school, but his mother forced him to go. He was embarrassed because his clothes were unusual. He did not have his bag, books, and homework. He thought that God wanted that he should live like a person who was different from others and did not fit well in the society. Zan was so upset that he wished to die. I walked around school like a zombie. Everything felt surreal and I was not sure what was going to happen. All the security I had known from my old school, my friends, my house, and my cat had all been ripped away. Zan walked around the school like a dull, lifeless person. He was not happy at all. He felt insecure as all his belongings, his old school, old friends, pet cat, and his house, they have all had been snatched from him. When I walked through what used to be my house after school that day, I was shocked to see how much damage there was. Whatever had not burned was destroyed by the water and chemicals they had used to put out the fire. The only material things not destroyed were the photo albums, documents, and some other personal items that my mother had managed to heroically rescue. But my cat was gone, and my heart ached for her. In this paragraph, it is shown that on his way back, he walked through his burnt house and was shocked to see the extent of damage that had been caused by the fire and the water that had extinguished it. The only things that were safe were the ones that his mother had rescued. The papers, photos, and some personal items. Zan had lost his cat too. There was no time to grieve. My mother rushed me out of the house. We would have to find a place to live. I would have to go buy some clothes for school. Now, Zan could not grieve the loss of his cat because they had to rebuild their life once again. They had to arrange a place to live in, they had to arrange clothes for his schools, etc. We had to borrow money from my grandparents because there were no credit cards, cash, or even any identification to be able to withdraw money from the bank. Everything had gone up in smoke. Zan and his mother had to borrow money from their grandparents as they did not have their credit cards, cash, or any identity proof to withdraw money from the bank. That week, the ruble that used to be our house was being cleared off the lot. Even though we had rented an apartment nearby, I would go over to watch them clear away debris, hoping that my cat was somewhere to be found. She was gone. I kept thinking about her as that vulnerable little kitten. In the early morning, when I would disturb her and get out of bed, she would tag along after me, climb up my robe, and crawl into my pocket to fall asleep. I was missing her terribly. After some days, the workers were removing the remains of the burnt house. They were living in a small rented nearby, but Zan would visit his old house and see the workers. He wished to find his cat there. He had lost her but kept thinking of the poor soul, how it would wake up when Zan disturbed it and then followed him, climbed up his gown, and would fall asleep while sitting in his pocket. He missed her badly. It always seems that bad news spreads quickly, and in my case, it was no different. Everyone in high school, including the teachers, was aware of my plight. I was embarrassed as if somehow I were responsible. What a way to start off at a new school. This was not the kind of attention I was looking for. Zan thought that bad news spread faster because everyone, including all the teachers, knew about his bad story. Zan felt embarrassed, as if he was guilty for all that had happened. He was getting attention for all the wrong reasons. He started thinking negatively. The next day at school, people were acting even more strange than usual. I was getting ready for gym class at my locker. People were milling around me, asking me to hurry up. I thought it strange, but in the light of the past few weeks, nothing would surprise me. It almost seemed that they were trying to shove me into the gym. Then I saw why. There was a big table set up with all kinds of stuff on it, just for me. They had taken up a collection and bought me school supplies, notebooks, all kinds of different clothes, jeans, tops, suits. It was like Christmas. I was overcome by emotion. People who had never spoken to me before were coming up to me to introduce themselves. I got all kinds of invitations to their houses. Their genuine outpouring of concern really touched me. In that instant, I finally breathed a sigh of relief and thought for the first time that things were going to be okay. I made friends that day. In this paragraph, the turn in the life of Zan has been explained. The next day at school was unusual. Zan was changing for the gym class when students gathered around him and asked him to hurry. Zan was accustomed to strange happenings and so did not react much. The students pushed him into the gym and he realized the reason when he reached there. There was a table full of articles like notebooks, clothes, stationery items. It felt like Christmas time. Zan got emotional. He made new friends. They invited him to their houses. He was moved by their concern for him. He felt relieved because it was for the first time that he felt something good was happening to him. He made new friends that day. A month later, I was at my house watching them rebuild it. But this time it was different. I was not alone. I was with two of my new friends from school. I took a fire for me to stop focusing on my feelings of insecurity and open up to the wonderful people around me. Now I was sitting there watching my house being rebuilt when I realized my life was doing the same thing. In this paragraph, it is explained that how Zan was trying to overcome from his sadness. After a month, Zan visited his house, but this was not the same time when he went there alone. This time, he was with his two friends. The incident transformed him. He came out of the negativity and made new friends. He realized that just like his house was being rebuilt, similarly, his life was also being rebuilt. He was again trying to regain the energy in his life. He again started living his life. While we sat there on the curb planning my new bedroom, I heard someone walk up to me from behind and say, "Does this belong to you?" When I turned around to see who it was, I couldn't believe my eyes. A woman was standing there holding my cat. I leaped up and grabbed her out of the woman's arm. I held her close to me and cried into that beautiful orange fur. She purred happily. My friends were hugging me, hugging the cat, and jumping around. Now there was the turn in the life of Zan. They sat on the pavement and were planning Zan's new bedroom. Someone walked up to Zan from behind and asked if that the cat which she was holding belonged to him. Zan grabbed his pet cat and held her close and cried. On union with her master, the cat made a happy sound. Zan's friend shared his happiness and jumped around. Apparently, my cat had been so freaked by the fire that she ran over a mile away. Her collar had our phone number on it, but our phones had been destroyed and disconnected. This wonderful woman who took her in and worked hard to find out whose cat it was. Somehow, she knew this cat was loved and sorely missed. Because of the fire, Zan's pet cat behaved strangely and ran almost a mile away. She lost her way. Although their phone number was written on her collar, but as their phone had been destroyed in the fire, the lady could not contact them. She made lots of efforts to trace their address through the number and thus reached them. She could make out that the cat was being missed by her master because the cat was also sad and missed him. As I sat there with my friends and my cat curled up in my lap, all the overwhelming feelings of loss and tragedy seemed to diminish. I felt gratitude for my life, my new friends, the kindness of a stranger, the loud purr of my beloved cat. My cat was back, and so was I. When Zan sat with his cat and his friends, the sadness disappeared. He was happy and thankful for getting a new life which got him new friends. A kind woman who returned his pet cat. The last line, "My cat was back and so was I," explained that Zan was in deep love with his pet cat. His soul lies in his pet cat. When he got back his pet cat from that kind woman, he felt alive. He was happy and got his pet cat, family members, and new friends back in his life. I hope you all have understood this chapter. Read it once again. Thank you.